Hey everybody, welcome to another episode of Thought Leaders. I'm your host, Chris Shang, and today we have Vikas Potta, who is co-founder of Fable. Thank you so much for joining us.
Hey, Chris. Nice to have you.
Yeah, of course. Tell us a little bit about Fable. What do you guys do? What kind of companies do you guys work with?
Yeah, thanks. So Fable is an interactive demo platform for go-to-market teams. The whole thought process of Fable is to help sales and marketing teams close more deals faster. And to that end, we work with SMBs and mid-market companies across the globe that do a lot of inbound as well as outbound sales, depending on how that motion looks like, and require demo as a critical part of their GTM process. That's where Fable kicks in.
Got it. And is there a specific type of company that you work with, specific vertical, size, or stage?
Yes, currently our focus is on catering to B2B SaaS companies, especially the ones that are in the growth stage, which is why I said either an SMB or a mid-market. Companies that are under about 500 or 600 team members are the target market that we're focusing on right now. Predominantly, the company is based in the US, but we do have a few customers in the likes of UK, South America, India as well.
Got it. Very cool. So we'd love to kind of like more drill into, Fable and what you guys do there. But before we do, tell us a little bit about your background. I know you come from like a biz dev sales background. How'd you end up in that before becoming a founder?
Well, I've been in B2B SaaS as a sales and a GTM guy for a little about 13 years now. So outside of this, I'll be hard pressed to find a job, I guess. So I'm trying hard to make sure that I am where, I sort of belong. And over the course, what I've realized is for every product that you're trying to sell, the story or the narrative that you take across and, go to your prospect or your potential customer is extremely important. And along with that, you also talk about the demo of your product. It might be an in-person demo or a demo of a Zoom call, or in the form of a presentation, etc. And we realized that regardless of which product or which kind of customer that you're talking to, the demo is an extremely same process. So you don't customize it depending on a pain point. You don't customize it depending on the persona, industry, requirements. It's the same Acme demo that companies have been giving day in and day out. And that's when we realized that there's a problem that that has to be solved. We ended up talking to a bunch of sales and marketing folks across the globe that are running growing B2B SaaS companies and realized that this is not a problem that we were facing alone. And that's eventually how Fable was born. And here I am talking about it.
Got it. Very cool. How did you make that delineation between working for an organization, then like starting and becoming a founder? I know you've done it a few times. So maybe with Fable, like it wasn't as jarring for you, but what was it like kind of going through that first founder journey? Because obviously there's a lot of muscles that you have to build up, I feel like, in order for you to ultimately be able to stomach kind of the ups and downs and the ebbs and flows of becoming a founder, right? Like the idea of getting to product market fit. And so tell us a little bit about what that experience was like, maybe from the first time that you started and your journey to entrepreneurship and becoming a founder versus like what do you know now that you did differently with Fable?
I think it's a very interesting question, right? I mean, a lot of people talk about founding a company, but then the other kind of discussion is founding a company once versus doing it a few times. And the massive difference that I think I've seen people do it is the folks who keep doing it time and again very clearly know that the focus has to be on distribution. So when we did it for the first time, I still remember we were trying to make sure that we get the best product out there. We're worrying about getting a pixel perfect design, trying to make sure that the website landing pages looks clean, the pricing is absolutely structured. And unfortunately, we would do that even before talking to a prospective customer. Right. This time, what we have realized is it doesn't matter what kind of a website you have. It doesn't matter what kind of a product you have or what pricing structure you have. At the end of the day, if you're not solving a real problem that somebody out there is facing, it doesn't matter what you're building and what you're selling it for. That, I think, is the biggest learning that I have, having seen companies in my limited journey over the last few years. Focus on making sure that you solve for at least one pain point, which is something that's game changing for the ICP that you have in mind, and then think about doing everything else. that I would say is the biggest lesson.
Yeah. And how did you accomplish that with Fable? Like, what was that? Did you like go out and talk to, 200 potential customers or and get that feedback loop around the pain point, or how did you go about it with Fable?
It's sort of similar. So what we did was we charted out a list of 100 companies that we wanted to talk to, not primarily from getting them onboarded as customers, but trying to listen to them, considering they were, sort of leaders in the category that they were at in their specific country as far as B2B SaaS is concerned. So we created a list of 100 companies, very clearly started defining who our ICP is, then started reaching out to them through LinkedIn, through emails, through cold calls, etc. Told these people why we're doing this. In fact, obviously, we didn't have a product to sell back then. It was more of a user research or an interview for us to sort of understand if these people are facing problems similar to what we had mapped at our own end. And ended up doing about 100 odd interviews, if I would say, and about 70 odd interviews gave us this thought process that, you know what, directly or indirectly, these 70 odd people are talking about the demo problem. They're talking about the personalization problem, which is actually a very critical piece in helping them close more deals. And that eventually, blossomed into what we've built at Fable today.
Got it. Okay. And with with Fable, there's a few other competitors in the space, right? Like, and so how did you look at that? Like with where the market was, were those like Walnut, for example, or a couple other companies that do it? Like what, there's another one called Story Lane, I think, right? So like, how are you looking at them? Were they around when you started? Because you're still also fairly young, or like, how were you looking
Yes.
to carve out a niche within the space a little bit differently than?
Yes. They were very much there when we started, but the way we looked at it is more of an opportunity than a threat. So the fact that somebody like a Walnut has spent so much time educating the audience, the ICP, I mean, think about it, right? In our previous avatars, we were our own ICP. So we understand the problem so very deeply that we know why it matters. And thanks to companies like Walnut, and we still thank for having competitors like them, with the reach that they have, they're educating the market that this is what the problem is about. This is why it needs to be solved. And by the way, one of the ways to solve it is using a product like Walnut. So it becomes easier for new age companies like Fable to go out there and say, you know what, hey, we are not just a competitor to Walnut, but we're doing better than what they can. We're doing faster than what they can. We're doing, a more affordable price than what they can. So that's the way we are trying to tackle the market. And that's exactly, been helping us, because gone are the days where we had to go to prospects and say that, hey, you know what, Fable is an interactive demo platform. And by the way, this is what an interactive demo means. We don't really have to do that anymore. By the time we go to these prospects, they know what this means. They're obviously having the pain point based on the signals that we have. It all boils down to, helping them understand why are we better than the other options that are there in the market.
Interesting. Very cool. And in terms of like working with co-founders, do you have the same team of people that you are working with here that you've done previously, or is it a different group of people? And how do you go about figuring out the different roles?
So, I have two other co-founders as a part of Fable, and all three of us were previously working at a company called FusionCharts. And we previously were heading our own functions. One of my co-founders was the chief of staff, and the other was head of engineering. And towards our last exercises at FusionCharts, we were responsible for helping the company get acquired from the sales side of things. So we worked very closely for the few years that we were together. And from the time FusionCharts got acquired, we were brainstorming on a few ideas to start up. So it was not a surprise that the three of us teamed up together, because we knew as friends, we knew our weaknesses. We sort of complement each other because we come with different sort of skill sets. And all three of us have seen similar experiences in the past in terms of, starting up, working with startups, up close, seeing an exit, seeing a shutdown, etc. Right? So that basically made it extremely easy for us to say that, hey, you know what, we can be a decent team and let's get started.
Got it. So you guys had some experience working together. What would you say some of the challenges have been with Fable, like especially in the early days of taking this idea of we're going to go into a space where we already know that there's leaders in this space. We know we're going to do it differently like this, but how are you thinking about a go-to-market motion that's unique in and of itself to like create a differentiator for you versus some other companies in the space?
Yeah, I think what we've seen is we've seen a lot of blue oceans in the way the market is even today, not just when we started, right? So if you look at companies like Walnut, the focus is on targeting companies that are enterprise, right? Hundreds of sales team members, hundreds of marketing team members, a lot of folks on the ground doing PPTs, etc. So we're not targeting those enterprise customers at all. The moment you leave enterprise, you have a huge ocean with a lot of mid-market and SMB companies that are still underserved, which is where companies like Storylane are doing as much as they can to capture a major part of the pie. We see that as an opportunity because there are not way too many people. And if you were to serve these SMB as well as mid-market customers, you also need to focus on making the product that simple. Think of the ICP at the end of the day. These are not power tech users. These are salespeople or marketing team members who have their own KPIs, who are worried about increasing their conversions or closing more deals or hitting their quota. They wouldn't really want to spend a lot of time putting together a demo, editing a demo, sending a demo, etc. Right? And they don't really want to involve teams from product, design, or engineering. We want something that's super simple, can get started immediately. It can be done without anybody's help. And that's something that's affordable as well. So that's the entire spectrum that we are trying to tackle at Fable. And the more and more we see our customers getting hooked to, using Fable from the time they're on board, the more belief that we have that we can capture a major share of that pie.
Interesting. Okay. The next couple of questions I have is more so towards like, the landscape of what we're going through right now in the market has changed a lot, right? I think like I'll give you an example. I feel like I was just at like the SaaStr conference, and compared to previous years, it felt like it has taken a hit in terms of the amount of vendors that were there. And then it seemed like the attendance was lower than previous years, at least like anecdotally. I don't know what the actual numbers were. But at least in the vendor space, like it was very clear that like it was like probably close to like 50% less vendors there than last year, for example. You are seeing this pullback in terms of, I feel like, company spend. So how are you like, has it impacted you guys at all from when you first started off in your thesis in the very beginning from a couple of years ago to today, like, and then how is that impacting either the way that you roll out additional features to offset those things, or even like, again, like maybe you're focusing on a market where that's not as relevant and it's not as maybe saturated like enterprise and like maybe like the hyper growth mid-market companies. And yeah, how do you guys think about that? Is that part of the reason why you're strategically more focused on the ones that have like lower tech tech knowledge or what have you?
I mean, it's been a conscious decision for us from day one that we don't want to target enterprise, because obviously for a startup, it's extremely difficult to be enterprise ready from day zero.
Yeah, of course.
Right? Obviously, we need a lot of compliance, we need a lot of tech, we need a lot of certifications, we need a lot of backing, a lot of case studies. So it's always a choice of quantity versus quality, right? And the volume, right? What we realized is, given the kind of ICP that we have and the understanding we have, maybe we can crack open the SMB and the mid-market space because that's underserved. So the decision was more about what we have as an opportunity in the market than how the market would behave. Of course, there's always an up and down in the market. There are going to be good quarters, there are going to be bad quarters. But obviously, when we started, we didn't have a knowledge of that. What we were only trying to understand was, given our backing and given our understanding and our experience, which market are we best suited to serve? And our experience said that, we have served a lot of mid-market and SMB customers in the past. Let's go and do that rather than trying to reinvent the wheel. And what we learned along the way is what is helping us in the current market today. What we saw was, if you look at the enterprise route, it's extremely difficult because you're charging them some sort of an annual licensing fee, some sort of a setup cost. You need to get a sign-off from the CFO or the finance team. You take a couple of months from the engineering team to set all of this up and then go ahead. Whereas with a model like Fable, an SDR or an AE or let's say a product marketer can sign in, use their email address and create the first demo and get out in as less than 5 minutes as possible, right? So we've completely worked on the PLG motion side of things. So our entire pitch is now moved from, hey, do you want to use an interactive demo, to something like, hey, Chris, I've already given you 10% more leads in the last 2 weeks. Now would you want to learn what more Fable can help you do? So it's more about talking about the ROI and not just talk about it. We're giving them the ROI and then telling them that, you know what, if you could do that with a free tier of Fable, what can you do with a paid plan? And that's how the whole conversations have changed for us.
Got it. Okay. And do you feel like people's ways of buying through, yeah, I guess I'm curious as to like, how do you feel like people's buying habits have changed or evolved, if at all, for your customers?
I think it has changed quite a lot, but that's something that we've been seeing over the last couple of years. A lot of prospective customers do their research even before they start talking to you. Right?
Yeah.
You have the likes of G2, Trustpilot, a lot of third-party reviews. You have dark social, where all of these folks are there on Slack communities or LinkedIn groups, or there's an influencer talking about a problem like this. So even before they come to your website or something that's related to your brand or your product, they've already done their research. So it boils down to how you take them from there to the step where they swipe their card. And the bet that we are taking is to sort of help them understand what Fable is capable of and help them create their first demo in as less as 2 minutes. So initially, creating a demo with Fable would take about 10-15 minutes. Then we try to reduce all the hiccups, the steps required. And now with our LLM and AI, you can actually create a demo with Fable and move out in under a couple of minutes. And what we have seen is that first impression is what matters, because if somebody is looking to create a demo, like you said, Fable is not the only platform out there. There are a few others that these people would try. And we are trying to remove all the friction points that these people would have with some of the companies. You land on the website, you don't wait for the sales guy. You can sign up for free. You can create your first demo. You can use AI. You can see the output and you can move on, right? At the same time, if you compare this with any of our competitors, they'll have to wait for somebody to give their access to a free trial, set up their account, share their screen, do a demo. And when all of this happened in the next 3 or 4 days, these people would have already become power users of Fable. So it's extremely difficult for them to look at an option outside of us. And that's the way we are tackling it.
Got it. Okay, and then I guess as a couple of last minute questions here would just be around what is how is the market changing, or are you guys still so young where there's still so much white space and green pastures for you? But I guess what is the kind of the thinking here in the next few years to come around how the market might change and especially with AI changes and generative AI, and how involved is that going to be part of discovery? I get the idea of being able to see something before talking to somebody, but yeah, I guess how do you guys think about just the user behavior or specifically around discovery and then purchase, right? And how do you think that's going to change in the next couple of years? Or is that something you guys aren't even talking about?
We are definitely talking about the discovery process. What we have realized is, especially in the last 12 to 15 months, most of the leads that we've received is either driven by a third-party mention or an influencer talking about it, right? LinkedIn for us has been a massive platform. We're talking about different trends, people talking about pain points. I've seen even, last morning, I've had a couple of people come to me and say, hey, because I've heard that, interactive demos can solve this pain point for me because there's an influencer that I follow and he was talking about this problem. And I was searching for products like that and I landed on Fable's website, but I'm not really sure how you solve that for me, right? So I think we are trying to double down on what we've seen as a pattern. A lot of inbound is what we're focusing on, but because what we've seen is there's a lot of cold interest on the outbound side of things. It might be because of how you mentioned about the market, or I like the way you spoke about the attendance in SaaStr, et cetera, and you mentioned that about 50% less crowd, et cetera. if you were to talk about it, I'll take my own example. I was there for SaaStr last year. I'm not coming this year. I was not there this year, right? I mean, I had a team which came with me last year. None of them actually went this year, right? I think it's also conscious choice where people believe that, when there was a lot of money, flying around the market, people said, hey, I'm going to do this, I'm going to do that, I'm going to attend an event, I'm going to put up a booth, I'm going to run ads. Whereas now everybody's talking about stability, right? How do I make sure that I reduce my CAC? How do I make sure that I grow slowly but steadily? How do I make sure that I land and expand? So I think those are the things that we're talking about, which is why I said that we're doubling down on a lot of these inbound, routes right now. So we're definitely talking about, people finding out Fable. But then about the conversion side of things, I think it's a work in progress. What we are trying to do is use our own product to reduce the sales cycles. Previously, it was about a couple of months. Now we are at about 3 weeks. But I still think that's longer, considering the amount of information that these people have even before using my product or talking to us. So that I still think is a work in progress.
Got it. And how about in terms of like from a larger scope of things, like how do you think your customer is changing, right? Like, is that something you're imagining? Like, because if you're seeing that internally, is that a trickle down effect to your type of customers, or is your customers, market different? And that's why I'm asking is in terms of, because your product is helping them solve a specific problem, right?
Yeah.
Around their
Yeah.
go-to-market and helping them shorten their sales cycle. But is their market changing, or is it similar to you in terms of how you guys look at your existing customer base and how you guys go to market? And yes, there's these external, variables that we cannot account for, but we're focused on doing X, Y, and Z. Because I'm curious as to how that ultimately then impacts how you guys prioritize, different feature sets or your product roadmap, and like how does that change things? So you guys obviously continuously evolve or pivot the product to how people buy, like especially how your customers segments buy.
Absolutely. I think that's a great question. So what you've seen is the good thing for us, at least in our own space about the demo space, is our market and our customers' market is the same.
Yeah.
We're pretty much targeting similar kind of companies. So we have learnings in two parallels. One, obviously, we are in the market, we're trying to sell our own product, and we're talking to potential customers. We know what's happening. Versus when we obviously talk to our own customers about what's happening with them, when we brainstorm with them for new features and new products, etc., we take a learning from them as well. And the good thing is we're all targeting the similar kind of market. And the difference that we have seen over the last few quarters in specific was the number of people who want to use the product is coming down, but then the pain point is a lot more severe. So previously, I mean, I still remember in Jan, Feb this year, people would come to me and tell that, hey, I heard about interactive demos. I want to give it a shot. Versus now, people are coming to me and saying, hey, Vikas, we are not able to hit our quota, but this is what I have. This is my current sales process. Help me improvise this. And how can I fit in Fable to hit my quota? Otherwise, I'm going to get fired. These are real conversations, right? I mean, all of us know that for a GTM person, the output is a 0 or 1.
Yep.
Even though you have a lot of KPIs, for a marketer, you can know if it's delivering or not. If a sales guy, you know if the person is delivering or not, just by looking at the numbers. Yep. And the way we have moved the entire product is, rather than saying, hey, you can create a kick-ass demo, to saying that, hey, with this, you can actually close deals X days faster. Or with this, you can generate, deals that are 20x faster or more than what you were doing in the previous quarter, right? So I think this is a major shift that we are seeing, and which is good in a way. So look at these people. Even if I have just a couple of licenses with a growing organization today, and if they're successful using Fable in whatever they want to achieve for the next couple of quarters, the market is good and it's back and the money keeps flowing in, the same person is going to go to their team and say, hey, Chris, you know what? I've used this product. It has helped us in the last couple of quarters. This is why I hit my quota. I think there are a few use cases which we should showcase and present to the larger team. That's basically what we're banking on right now.
Got it. Interesting. And I guess like my last question here is just kind of, do you ever get pushback around, oh, this is a nice to have versus something like that they feel like that they need to have when it comes to like allocating their own internal resources, where obviously they would do it at a less efficient rate, and then it's probably not as scalable, but they don't have the added cost of having a third-party SaaS product. And how do you address some of those instances?
So what we've seen is, especially for people who don't really have a strong pain point, it doesn't matter what you do, you're not going to get a buy-in, right? So there might be a few lurkers who would say, hey, I was looking at G2's report. I saw you were there on the first quadrant. Looked interesting. I'm curious to know what you guys are going to do. And what we've realized is maybe previously these guys would still go around the funnel, but in the last few weeks, we have seen that these are conversations that are not going to help either parties, right? But like I said, what we've also seen on the other side is we're seeing an increasing number of real conversations where people would come to me and my team and say, hey, help me not get fired. They don't talk about demos at all. And here we are trying to, create a landing page, trying to talk about the lingo, trying to talk about, some content around demos. And people are coming to me and telling that, hey, Vikas, how can Fable help me not get fired? Right. So I think that is what, we're trying to focus on. Yes, there is a pushback from people, but these are not the ones who have, the right pain points. The way I would look at it is also for an opportunity for us to sort of, niche down and say that, hey, we're not for everybody. We're only for people who need this, and this is what we deliver.
Fair enough. Very cool. On that note, I want to say thank you so much for taking the time and sharing your journey and also what Fable does, and just a little bit more of the internal in terms of like how you guys have been able to go to market and share some of your understanding around the successes and the concerns in terms of like the space and then what you're expecting in the future.
Thank you so much, Chris. It was a pleasure to have a chat with you today.
Same. Thank you.